afternoon, everyone. Welcome and thank you for being part of this WorkSafe webinar for Health and Safety Month 2021. It is great to have you with us. My name is Cameron Ling and I'll be your host for this session today. Now, while our program of sessions are virtual, we still have the same aims of Health and Safety Month that we do every single year, which is to keep you up to date with everything that's going on. This year, our theme is You Learn Something New Every Day. Our session, Workplace Mental Health 101, a business case study, will talk about the importance of a mentally healthy workplace and the work of WorkWell. WorkWell helps support business leaders to prevent mental injury and promotes a mentally healthy workplace with resources, funding, and networking opportunities. We'll hear from 3 organisations that have been funded by WorkWell and their work so far. We've structured this session as a conversation between myself and our panellists that should run for about 40 minutes. Then we're going to throw the floor open for 20 minutes question and answer with you, the audience. The session will involve myself and the 4 panellists, as I mentioned, 1 from WorkSafe Victoria and 3 others who will outline their learnings and experience in engaging workplaces to make changes for mental wellbeing. They are Madeline Barry, Knowledge Translation Program Officer, WorkWell, WorkSafe Victoria. Maddie, welcome to you.
Thanks, Cameron.
It's great to have you with us. We've also got Linda Hunt, Working Well in Wellington Project Manager, Wellington Primary Care Partnership. Linda, it's great to have you with us.
Thanks, Cameron.
Also joining us today, Dr. Alison Kennedy, Acting Director and Senior Research Fellow, National Centre for Farmer Health, Deakin University. Nice to see you, Alison.
Hi, Cameron. Great to be here.
It's great to have you with us. And also joining us, Adrian Panozzo, Project Manager, Civil Contractors Federation Victoria, Positive Plans, Positive Futures Program. Welcome, Adrian.
G'day, Cam.
It's great to have all of our panellists and we are going to bombard them. I certainly will, and you're allowed to as well with all of those questions. But first of all, let's start with some background. Employers often report that they find the topic of workplace mental health and wellbeing difficult to navigate at times. To create mentally healthy workplaces and prevent mental injury, you need to know where to start. WorkWell was developed by WorkSafe to help fill the gap, providing resources, funding and linkages that every industry can use to promote mental health and prevent mental injury. A key focus of the program is the WorkWell Mental Health Improvement Fund, which has invested in 25 programs. They are aiming to prevent mental injury and promote mental wellbeing for Victoria's most at-risk workers. Maddie, you're a program officer in the WorkWell program at WorkSafe Victoria. Could I ask you to give us a little background about the WorkWell approach?
Yeah, for sure, Cameron. So, what we know is that workers with mental injury claims due to bullying and harassment, trauma or work-related stress, they're taking 4 times as long as a worker with a physical injury to recover. So we really want to prevent that. And so WorkWell starts with the tenet that a mentally healthy workplace is one where there are measures in place to prevent harm, where you can identify risks to mental health, where you can manage any harm that does occur from an early stage, and then also one that actively supports recovery. So in a mentally healthy workplace, protective factors are really promoted and encouraged. And employers can actually learn, how to identify psychological risks and also remove or reduce them. And we have an offering for that at WorkWell, and that's what we call the toolkit. So that's an online tool. It's a step-by-step approach for business leaders to help them to promote a mentally healthy workplace and to prevent mental injury through access to tailored tools, resources, research and information. And then also we know it's important and good because good mental health leads to good outcomes for business. So it leads to improved morale, it leads to improved productivity, and it also leads to reduced absenteeism as well.
Thanks for that, Maddie. If I could just stay with you for a second, there are 11 factors within the control of employers that can influence mental health and safety at work. Can you explain a bit more about this?
Yeah, so those are 11 risks or the root causes of work-related stress that can lead to mental injuries. So essentially, if they are not controlled or managed, they can lead to work-related stress, which can then lead to mental injuries and physical injuries as well. And I've actually got a short video here to show you about that, if we could play that now, please.
Work-related factors are anything in the management or design of work that can positively or negatively impact an employee's mental health. When these factors are not controlled or managed, they can lead to stress, which may result in a physical injury, mental injury, or even both at the same time. From workplace relationships to the impacts of remote working, understanding work-related factors gives you the power to create a positive, supportive and inclusive workplace and to develop good systems of work for supporting mental health. Take the first steps today.
So yeah, those 11 work-related factors are job demands, job control, support, also role clarity, workplace relationships, organisational change management, organisational justice, recognition and reward, environmental conditions, remote or isolated work, and also violent or traumatic events. They're really important ones to remember. And we know that these things show up differently in different workplaces, in different industries, and for different workers. So that's why we funded, these really great projects across the region that tackle those factors.
Thanks for that, Maddie. And as you mentioned, WorkWell has been funding those projects out there in rural and regional Victoria to make changes on the ground. Today, we have representatives from some of these Mental Health Improvement Fund projects to share with you practically the lessons they learned about how to improve workplace mental health. Linda, let's start with you. You're running a fabulous project, Working Well in Wellington, where you asked your vulnerable shift workers about what could make the difference in improving mental well-being in their workplaces. Before I want to ask you a question by way of introduction, we've got a short video to show our audience.
Fatigue is a huge issue with shift work. Dealing with trauma, stressful situations, working in a health service, you never know what you're going to get in a day. Working Well in Wellington is a 3.5-year project funded by WorkSafe, WorkWell Mental Health Improvement Fund. The project aims to address factors that may increase the risk of mental health issues for shift workers: high job demand, low job control and poor support. There was multiple strategies that we did implement.
These included rostering practices, optimal shift rotations and a roster risk assessment tool.
When we invest in mental wellbeing in the workplace, the return on investment is there. So why not do this?
That's very powerful, Linda. Your project was piloted with Central Gippsland Health Service, but implemented across your shire with shift workers in a whole range of industries, from dairy manufacturing to correction centres. What were some of your key learnings about setting out to improve workplace mental health in regional areas?
Yeah, thanks, Cameron. So some of our key learnings were to meet shift workers outside of 9 to 5. So we encourage you to talk with your shift workers in their environment on afternoon or even night shift, not necessarily Monday to Friday. So this will contribute to a demonstration of genuine commitment to being a mentally healthy workplace and authenticity in your approach. Your shift workers are the experts. Listen and learn from them, and they will actually tell you what you need to know. Secondly, empowered staff will take the most advantage of a mentally well workplace and you'll get the best outcomes. Also, we found early career shift workers embraced and benefited from the strategies the most. And finally, we saw early on in the project is that whilst there is limited research on shift work and mental wellbeing, there is also a gap when promoting mental wellbeing for shift workers in that their families can be forgotten. Families are a key component to a shift worker finding the balance and support they need to thrive. So we encourage organisations to consider their employee families when building a mentally healthy workplace.
Well, thanks for that, Linda. Doing some wonderful work there. Our second funded project is represented by Dr. Alison Kennedy, as I mentioned before, Acting Director and Senior Research Fellow, National Centre for Farmer Health at Deakin University. Now, Alison, your project, the Primary Producer Knowledge Network, has been working with many types of farming businesses, from small family operations through to those with large seasonal contract workforces, to address workplace mental health issues. You've developed an online resource called Campfire Before I get to you, let's have a listen to some of their work here on their website, Campfire.
Farmers, they don't always prioritise their health, but they know that health and mental well-being really should be at the forefront of their farming business, because if they're not operational in an optimum way and really functioning at their best, then everything else suffers, not just themselves, but their family, their friends and their community. The ripples go a long way if their health is not optimum.
Well, Alison, to start, why Campfire?
Thanks, Cam. Look, we worked very hard on how best to engage with our primary producers and really listen to the needs of farmers. So we actually spent around about 10 months actually co-designing with farmers and working really closely with them to kind of really shape and design solutions to prevent mental injury. So I guess through that collaborative process, we came up with a range of recommendations. And we realised that things like language were really important. We also knew that tackling social and geographical isolation was important, particularly by building trusted networks. And we didn't want to create additional work for people by building on forums that they were already using and attending. So, that might be their local CFA group, their Best Wool, Best Lamb group, really sort of connecting with things that were already existing in the community. So it really became about sharing experience through storytelling, particularly with people who had been there and had experiences to share. Had to be very pragmatic and very practical, as farmers are, and also showing them, the how-tos, not sort of just preaching the theory. So Campfire really came from that. And the platform brings farmers together to chat, to listen to experts and peers, to ask questions and to pose their own solutions as well that others can learn from. So we do this through holding events as well called bonfires, and these are held fortnightly on Wednesday evenings. Farmers are able to hear from experts and also their peers. They're able to pose questions and provide answers to others and really kind of address those practical work-related factors. Campfire also has an Ember mode, so if people happen to miss the Wednesday evening event, they can catch up afterwards. They can view their blogs, they can listen to the podcasts, and if they happen to have poor internet quality, which we know is an issue in some rural areas, they're able to access our hard copy materials there as well.
Alison, following on from all that great work you're talking about there, how is it going?
Well, it is a really exciting project, Cameron, and it's something that's quite different. It's a text-based interaction on the Campfire platform, so it's different for people to get used to. We've also had to kind of pivot to what we had arranged as a face-to-face roadshow. We've now had to pivot that to online, which is always challenging, but everyone's managing that. We're obviously sort of still learning and we're adapting as we get feedback, and we do invite feedback from all of our participants along the way. We're working iteratively with our experts and our primary producers to really develop very meaningful and relevant podcasts. So it's all a work in progress. We've had some really positive results so far and some great feedback. We're getting some strong industry engagement and interest in the project. People from industry do see this as a really worthwhile way of preventing work-related risks. And I guess we're also learning around language. Early on in the piece, people didn't want to be using the terms mental health. They thought it was too stigmatising and that people wouldn't engage when we were using those terms. But something we have learnt along the way is that people are becoming much more comfortable using the language and actually talking about mental health in the workplace. So that's been a fantastic outcome.
It certainly has. Thank you, Alison, and such important work for our primary producers. Our final panellist today is Adrian Panozzo. I mentioned before, Project Manager, Civil Contractors Federation Victoria, Positive Plans, Positive Futures program. Before we go to Adrian, though, let's hear a clip from the construction industry about why this project is so important.
The CCF is a member-based organisation. We have somewhere in the order of 500 contractor and associate members who are responsible for all of the, I suppose, the infrastructure that we use in everyday life, from roads to bridges to rail, and particularly land development sector where we have water, utilities and sewerage. We've done a great job over the years looking after the physical health and well-being of our staff and our workers. But what about the mental health and well-being? CCF Victoria is pleased to be leading the Positive Plans, Positive Futures program here in Victoria. It's all about creating mentally healthy workplaces in the civil construction industry. CCF will be running a series of regional chapter forums, and also we have our annual summit where we bring together business leaders right across the industry to engage in conversations about creating mentally healthy workplaces with subject matter experts. We'll be focusing on leadership and culture change to help civil construction businesses deliver their own mental health action plans within their own operations.
Adrian, you're aiming to influence the way civil construction business owners, managers and workers think about workplace mental health. You're doing this through mental health action plans in an industry that's very familiar with plans. Could you tell us about the 6 businesses you're working with and how you are encouraging them to consider mental health prevention?
Yeah, thanks, Cam. Look, we intentionally selected a diverse range of businesses in size from 20 to over 200 workers, and they were providing a range of services to the construction industry. So we've got roads, asphalting businesses, a precast concrete business, and even traffic management and wastewater and drainage. The important thing for us was not to take a cookie cutter approach. We really wanted to try and work out if what we were proposing could work in a variety of settings and to scale to try and achieve systems change in the industry. That's the goal for us. There's a lot around treatment, recovery and awareness in terms of mental health. There's a lot of campaigns, there's a lot of activities you can get involved in, but there's not a lot around prevention. So for us, it was really bringing a focus around prevention because it's something that for a lot of people, when you talk about prevention, it's a bit intangible. So our approach, as you alluded to earlier, was the concept of action plans. The construction industry, they use plans on a daily basis, whether it's the construction plans they're using to build the projects they're working on. Safety plans have been around for a long time, environmental plans, and even more recently, things like diversity, inclusion, and even reconciliation action plans. So the goal for us was to put all the information around mental health in a context that everyday construction workers could understand in order to create a mentally healthy workplace. At the same time, Cam, there are some existing resources, and that's why we've gone all in on the mental health toolkit. And we've also used the WorkWell Insight Survey as a way to benchmark each organisation against their mental health in relation to common work-related factors.
Well, Adrian, how are you going in working to create change with these businesses?
Yeah, look, it's a change of mindset, Cam. Like it's pretty easy. I mean, they're in the solutions business and then they're into building stuff. So you can easily, do a toolbox talk or bring in a guest speaker and think, okay, we've ticked the mental health box. But look, that's a quick, almost a sugar hit way to approach this. The real, we think, the proper way to approach it is to do an initial assessment, to actually get feedback from your workers to find out how they feel about the workplace and whether it's a psychologically safe workplace. So as Maddie spoke to earlier, we use the WorkWell Insight Survey to get a benchmark for each business so that they can see where they're at in relation to the 11 common work-related factors. And we're also able to then benchmark each business against the industry. Every organisation we're working with, they have strengths and opportunities that they can work on. But look, the interesting thing, Cam, if you asked anyone, are you serious about mental health or are you interested in creating a mentally healthy workplace? They'd say yes. But when you actually get down to the nitty gritty, I've had some really interesting conversations with businesses. They would say, look, I'm really committed, but I just don't have the time now. Can you just send me the template when you're finished and we'll pick it up from there? But the reality is, creating a mentally healthy workplace, it's a very personal journey for each business. Where they're at and their needs and the morale and the leadership and the culture within their organisations are very individual. That being said, we're certainly making progress. Some are making more progress than others. They're quicker to understand what prevention looks like in their business. But once we do start talking around, well, what does job demands mean in the context of what you do day to day? And we can have that engaging conversation. People start to get comfortable because really they're the experts in their business and they know once they consult with their workers, potential solutions. So we're all about opening up that conversation and they become more confident, Cam. Like we see people going from being really nervous about, oh, what's the survey going to say? You know, they're really ready to feel shame and guilt about what they've been doing. And then all of a sudden they realize, oh, actually, we're doing some okay stuff and the opportunities, well, I can make sense of those. And then when they get that confidence up, that's when we're really able to make the impact. And the feedback is really interesting. For example, working with one business, the survey results came back and said that the business owner was really high on support. So fantastic, but was really low on recognition. And that's hard to resolve. But what we realised, that business owner had a group of young workers, and anyone who working in construction would know that it's really hard to attract young workers. It's really hard to recruit people into the industry. He was so worried about losing these younger workers that, well, what a few of the older blokes would say, these young blokes would get a bunch of flowers for turning up on a Monday. They would get congratulated all the time for the work they were doing. And what we heard from the mature workers or the more experienced workers was, we do all the hard work and the boss never says thanks to us. He just expects we'll do it. So when we sat down with that business owner and said, hey, think about how you're communicating with your workforce. Here's the impact it's having. The penny dropped for him. And, through basic change in communication strategies and everyone in the business realising that his intention was to support the younger guys and he still valued his more experienced workers, little breakthroughs like that happen all the time.
Such an important message there around communication, isn't it? Thanks for that, Adrian. Maddie, can I come back to you now? Can you talk about how the WorkWell approach encourages projects to address their identified problem?
Yeah, for sure, Cam. So what we know is that changing cultures really involves shifting mindsets and attitudes. And that's something that we do all together, not just as individuals. So that means coming together to work that out at every point in every workplace. So, as you can hear, what we have here is 3 very different journeys dealing with specific issues on the ground in their own area of expertise. So it really starts with listening to each other and to our workers in order to understand what's going to work, and then doing research to build on it and understand that before we come to the solutions. So you can hear how all the projects have been working with these workplaces, taking them on a personal journey and communicating. So it's really about that. It's about leaders driving the change by listening and consulting their workers to then help create it.
Well, and Maddie, you mentioned there about the individuals and the workers being brought on that journey. And good mental health is not only a great thing to have for those individuals and their workplaces, but it also makes economic sense, doesn't it? Have you got any baseline figures here for employers?
Yeah, the one that is really stunning is from PwC. They did a report and it showed that for every $1 invested in successful mental health initiatives, businesses saw a return on investment of $2.30.
That's a very nice thing to add to the bottom line when you get that sort of return. So that's a great highlight for employers there. Thanks for that, Maddie. Back to the project leaders, the 3 of you. Could I ask each of you what solutions emerged from your consultation with people, listening to their issues and workplace problems? Perhaps starting with you, Linda.
Yeah, for sure. So we co-designed 15 strategies in total with our workplaces and our shift workers. And I'll highlight 3 of these, which one is a mental wellbeing policy audit tool. So this policy audit tool is designed to provide the foundation of an organisation's commitment to creating a mentally healthy workplace by establishing a structure for organisational policies that promote mental wellbeing. So it's particularly important in the development of a positive organisational climate. We also developed a roster risk assessment tool. So the purpose of this roster tool is to identify risky rosters that may cause fatigue to workers. So this is specifically tailored for the health service as a self-roster. Fatigue can increase the number of adverse events at work and is considered to be a risk to mental wellbeing. The identification of a risky roster can create the catalyst for conversation between management and staff member to determine why this particular roster was requested or assigned, and what changes can be made to decrease the risk profile. And finally, the last strategy I just wanted to promote is that we developed this handbook series. So this was developed to assist shift workers to thrive. We developed one not only for the shift worker, we did one for the managers of shift workers and one for families of shift workers. So the booklet aims to give the reader information about possible impact of shift work and mental wellbeing, and offers some simple strategies and resources that a shift worker, their family and managers can utilise to protect their mental wellbeing.
Well, thanks for that, Linda. Some great outcomes for your project there, which is, I believe, is coming to its final stages. Alison, your project is 18 months in now. How are your results being used by primary producers so far?
Well, Cameron, everything is very practically focused. So Campfire draws on experts and other farmers to speak about what they themselves have done in practical terms to reduce workplace risk factors. So these are kind of stories and case studies in some ways that people can follow and implement in their own workplaces. And I think as we heard in the first audio, and we also found that running it regularly on a Wednesday evening, those campfire and bonfire events, we've got both kind of a bottom-up approach in the campfire platform, where kind of people themselves are kind of driving the conversation. And then we also have the top-down approach in those bonfire events, which are more facilitated, driven by the experts and the guest primary producer to really sort of drive the discussion in terms of work-related risk factors and how we prevent those. So there's different ways that we're kind of able to reinforce that messaging. The Campfire platform itself has more than 130 registered participants at the moment, which is really fantastic. But we reach a whole lot more through our blogs, our podcasts, and via our social media messaging. So we really are, again, reinforcing those messages across a number of platforms and able to reach people beyond those that are comfortable and have access to those online forums as well. So that's really important for us. Some of the topics that we've included so far are things like working effectively in a family business, managing communication within a farming business. We've looked at how to manage environmental resilience and build that within a business, because we know that has a big impact on mental wellbeing. And then we've also discussed, various professions that we can reach out to and resources that are able to upskill us and provide us with resourcing to help us prevent some of those work-related risk factors. And these have been, things like the Rural Financial Counselling Service and the AgriSafe clinic that's available through the National Centre for Farmer Health. So, yeah, lots of really relevant and practical topics, Cameron.
Thank you, Alison. And finally, Adrian, from you, how will you share the learnings back with Federation members and the sector more widely, and what are your next steps?
Yeah, look, for us, Cam, we're staying very focused around making sure that the industry understands that it's a different mindset and approach when you are dealing with prevention. We're still grappling with what that looks like. It's so easy to, as one business said to me, "Oh no, mate, we did mental health in Q1." So for them, it was a quarterly focus. And I said, "Well, what do you do for the rest of the year?" And they said, "Well, we focus on diversity in Q2." And they had a theme where for us it's about saying, be brave, be public in your commitment. Anyone who takes on this challenge, Cam, is actually industry leading. So we are encouraging businesses to say, look, if you take the time to get insights from your workers, get a benchmark around how psychologically safe they feel, then use the information and the data to implement your plan. The goal for us is to support businesses to move away from that quick fix, from having the toolbox talk where they might bring in a lived experience speaker who might give their individual story. Now, that individual story might resonate with a few people, But for a lot of people, it may have no impact, or it might actually even intimidate them and say, well, geez, I'm not a psychologist, I don't want to get involved. I mean, Cam, one business said, look, if we talk about this too much, it actually might create an issue. If we talk about this, our competitors might think we have a problem. So we're constantly grappling with turning it around, because just one last anecdote, if I could, Cam, one of our founding partners who signed up, he had a customer post on his social media site. Wasn't looking for any kudos, but there was a post that this business was involved in our project, and a customer said, I'm so glad I picked you to do my work. I didn't know you were involved in such a fantastic initiative. So when you look at Madeline's $2.30 return, you know, that's one way to look at it. That's the economic. But when you look at the social impact and the human-centred benefit, I just encourage any business that is thinking about doing this to actually give it a go and be brave, and you know, get that leadership and organisational commitment and start there.
That's a really strong message, Adrian. Thank you for sharing that with us. I'm sure people who are tuning in today, that will have an impact with them. I'd like to get to some questions now. How do we help employees with anxiety about coming back to work? Maddie, maybe do you want to have that one for starters?
Yeah, I can probably jump in there. So I guess something that's really important to note in relation to that question is, when we're talking about preventing mental injury, that's from stopping, you know, work-related stress, creating people having, you know, anxiety, depression, PTSD, etc. But I think it's about, you know, a third of people are dealing with anxiety. So people bring things from outside of work. So we are going to experience people having mental illnesses at work, and that's a normal part of life. You know, it's part of the continuum of mental health. But if someone has been injured from mental injury and is coming back to work, you can help them recover by having those return to work systems in place. So do you have an EAP program? Or what we see as really important is that communication with your employee and making sure that you're touching base. Now, as Adrian said, you don't need to be a psychologist to do that. That's checking in. Are you okay? How are you going? And working with, you know, their return to work coordinator if you have one, or yourselves in a collaboration, or getting some advice from WorkSafe. You can call our advisory line in terms of setting up a return to work plan for that person to come back to work. And most importantly, if that person has left work to deal with a mental injury because of something that has occurred at work, it's important that before that person comes back, that work-related factor is removed or reduced as much as possible. So that person is returning to a mentally safe environment where they won't experience that again.
Finally, Maddie, I know you mentioned it before, but where would you refer our audience for more information about WorkWell? Can you give us that website again?
Yep, www.workwell.vic.gov.au. You'll see the toolkit there. Please use it.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much. Really appreciated all of you, everyone who's asked questions, but all four of you sharing your stories and experiences and doing some wonderful things as well. Maddie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Cheers, Cam. Thanks.
And Linda, to you, thank you very much as well. All the best.
Thank you.
Alison, thank you. Good luck for everything that you're doing.
Thanks very much, Cam.
And finally, Adrian, thank you for joining us today and sharing your stories. Thank you. And as I mentioned, thanks to everybody who engaged in the questions. We hope you found it an interesting and informative session. I think we've well and truly updated you about the wonderful world of WorkWell and projects. More importantly, we've talked about what you can consider in your own efforts to prevent mental injuries in your workplaces. And remember, importantly, if there is anything you need to discuss urgently, there's the WorkSafe advisory line and emergency line. Maddie made mention of it before in relation to that particular question. So please do jump on that and utilise that advisory line or emergency line. We will note on the screen shortly a list of all the contacts that we've talked about today that you may find helpful. And if you have any requests for further information, please, we recommend you to get in touch with us. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Stay safe and all the best.